We're talking to Daryl remembers that. George Shuba, world-famous photographer here on the Ray Carr Show. So, Daryl, if I may, I'm going to start with you. How did it all begin for you? I mean, how did you learn so much about rock and roll to become George's right-hand man?
Well, I've always been into music, classic rock.
Yeah.
And I met him at a guitar show years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought he was a guy selling pictures of rock stars. Anyone could do that.
Right.
Then, a year or so later, I started reading about him in a newspaper.
George Shuba.
George Shuba, and he's the man that took the pictures.
But anybody can take a picture, but George is able to capture a moment that is this. Its time stops when George takes that picture. He just knows exactly when to take the picture. There's an instinct that not everybody has.
That's right.
And George, how would you explain that?
Well, you know, we were sitting there one day and we were talking about this, and I was talking to a writer from Scene Magazine, and she was telling me, she said, you know, George, she says, you watch the hands, and everything moves from the hands upward to the facial expression. And we started looking, and if you look at the board that we have here,
and there's a lot of great rock and roll stars in this board.
Just look at the hands, where they start. B.B. King, with his fingers up in the air, and, you know, then it portrays down to the arm and up into his facial expression, where he goes into almost a trance. And that's what B.B. King is about. Jackie Wilson with his hands down, and, you know, that hand on a microphone. And as he puts that microphone to his hands, everything is emanated through the arms, up into the brain, and into the facial expressions. That happened with Jimi Hendrix. It happened with everybody. It's tough to do when you got a group like the Beatles.
Okay.
You got 4 people. You're watching 4 people. Now, you got to understand this. This was during the period of time. This wasn't through digital cameras. We had a roll of film which had 12 exposures. You had to focus. You had to cock the shutter, fire your shot, advance it, and start all over again. And then when you went through your 12 shots, you had to unroll the film real quick and put another roll of film in. So there was a period of like 30 seconds. You lost the time. Did I lose a lot of good shots? Yeah, maybe I did. But the biggest thing is I captured the moment. This is Cleveland's history. You know, no one was doing rock and roll. When the Beatles came to Cleveland, there was a gentleman named Jim Lowell, and he was with WHK Radio. He was their publicist. And he said, are you good? And I had just gotten out of the Air Force, out of photo school. And we worked for the first 2 women photographers in the old arcade, me and my partner, Don Brill. And he said, are you good? And I said, I'm the greatest thing that ever happened to Cleveland, Ohio. You know, I was very humble at that time. Not like I am now.
Right.
But, you know, and that was the key to it. And so he said, how would you like to shoot the Beatles? And I said, I would love to. And I thought it was a gig where we were going to do some kind of crazy-ass thing that, you know, who knew what I was going to do.
Right.
So what I did is I said, after we signed the contract, I said to my partner, Don, I said, why the hell are we taking pictures of bugs? And this is the honest-to-God truth. It's in our book. I didn't know who the Beatles were because I was listening to Perry Como. I was listening to the Four Aces, the Four Lads, and, you know, all, you know, the top people in the 50s and the early 60s. And so my red badge of courage was Public Hall, September 15th, 1964. And that's when it all started for me. And that's when I became a rock and roll photographer. Why did I do it? I did it for the money.
At first,
yeah. The gig is a gig is a gig. But I watched things happen that I thought I'd never have happen. I went deaf because I literally had, you know, the mind and the body react towards sound. And what had happened was the noise level was so high, I worked stage right, which means my right ear was to the amps. Now, if you look at the Beatles pictures, they've got small amps. I mean, we're talking about, you know, things are 3 foot tall.
Yeah, they're nothing.
And they cranked them up to, I don't know, whatever number was on there, Daryl. Is that a 20 or a 10 or something like that? And this was the hard part, but they cranked it into a big hall like that. I never heard the song because the crowd was so loud, and there were flash bulbs, and these were flash bulbs now, mind you.
I remember those.
And you couldn't believe the kids were just in hysteria. And pretty soon the kids started rushing the stage because they had different sections. And luckily I was behind the police officers because there was a gentleman named Inspector Carl Bear who happened to be with the Cleveland Police Department. He stopped a concert because they were making too much noise. The Beatles were making too much noise.
But they were inside of a hall, though.
But plus the fact is there was almost a riot that was ensuing, and they didn't know how to handle it.
Oh, they were scared. They were ill-prepared.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm shooting these pictures, and what does this cop do? He decides to pounce on me, and as I'm going down, I'm still going clickety-click, click, click. And, of course, I got a few pictures that are out of focus and a bruised back end. But it was an interesting experience.
Oh, I can only imagine.
You know, we went from the Beatles to the Stones to the Dave Clark Five to Dorothy Fulheim. So we went from the beauty to the beast.
Well, that just opens Pandora's box for a few more questions about what was it like when you met the Beatles? I mean, were you nervous, or did you just say, hey, they're just musicians, who cares?
Well, you know, they got off the plane, and this is the funny part. I'm looking to see one of the photos, and I don't see it up on the board here. But when they got off the plane, they just came down the gangway. Now, you have to understand something. They were supposed to land at Cleveland Hopkins. They did not land at Cleveland Hopkins Airport. They landed at the IX Center, which was a Cadillac tank plant.
Okay.
Because of the fact is they were driving a propeller aircraft, and if those kids would have rushed the aircraft, those propellers were still turning, they would have been decapitated.
Yeah.
Now, there were 4 videographers from 4 television stations and 1 still photographer, and that was George Shuba. And so the end result, I was the man. And one of the pictures I have, I asked Paul, who was in a jump seat of a limousine, I said, Paul, could you do me a favor? Could you wave to me? This is my photo. Now, this picture has been produced all over the world, including if you went to Repepe Funeral Home out in Middleburg Heights, they have my picture in their entranceway because they use it for their Christmas card. Because they used the American limousine, which Anthony Mazzarella was the driver. I did ask Anthony, what did they say in the back? And he would not tell me.
Really?
Yeah, he was sworn to silence. Yeah, there were things that were said. But the funny part was, it was about 5, maybe 7 years ago, we looked at Ringo in the back seat. You smoke a cigarette a certain way, you do a doobie a different way. He was left-handed.
Yeah.
I don't say he was, and I don't say he wasn't. I do not believe that Bob Dylan just taught him marijuana, because they had come back from Hamburg, Germany, making their American tour, played for 3 straight days, and I know enough about drugs because I eventually became a narcotics officer for the sheriff's department with the rank of captain because of my background with photography. So
that's an unbelievable life.
Well, it's a
photographer, cop. You've seen every end of it all.
Yeah, I mean it's been totally different. I mean, the only one thing that I really regret. Well, there's some new words that I'm putting in. Is that I did not spend enough time with my family. I had to sacrifice something, and how do I put this? My ego got in the way, and that was one of the things I had to give up. And but I think my family has finally forgiven me. Maybe not, because I saw some death notices on my windshield as we came up here. So, but no, just kidding around. But it's a chance to meet all the people that you only dream about. I've got over 6,000 images. Some images we've never even printed up, right, Daryl?
Oh, that's correct.
You know, what was the last one? Thin Lizzy?
Thin Lizzy.
Oh, Phil Lynette.
Promoting their Jailbreak album, 76 at Peaches Records in Cleveland.
Wow.
He was there. You should see it.
Wow. I remember the song very well.
And the funny part is, John Travolta was supposed to be there too, but he had gotten not laryngitis, but I think he had the flu. So, but each one of them had their own idiosyncrasies. James Brown.
Yeah, talk about James Brown and the famous flames.
Oh, gods, I'll tell you. People ask me today, who are your 3 favorites?
All right.
And this is not in chronological order.
And why, though?
Okay, and I'll give you that answer. The 3 are Aretha Franklin, James Brown, and Neil Diamond. And not because you're sitting there, dear. Cindy is over there going, yay! That's not the reason. I spent 8 hours with Neil Diamond at Jogga Lake Park, and we talked.
What year was that?
Probably 67, 68.
Okay. He was still on Bang Records.
Yeah. Well, he was writing at that time. He was just coming out of his shell.
Mm-hmm.
Now, see, you talk about Bang Records, you talk about the records. I don't remember those things. That's why I've got Daryl sitting here.
Daryl remembers that.
What I try to do is, my job was to capture the moment, preserve that moment for history, for the people of Cleveland and the world to see.
Right.
And that's my accomplishment. That's my gift to the world, of putting this stuff down on film. I never thought I had a talent until someone came up to me and said, you're good. And I said, yeah, I know I'm good. And they said, no, you are good. And then I started looking at my stuff in a different light. And, yeah, they're right. It's hard because you do a lot of sacrifice. You have to give up your Saturdays and your Sundays, and you're going to concerts. I was going to 2-3 concerts a week. Never taking my family there. I took my neighbor. I remember one of the guys from the roadie from Michael Stanley, John Vorbel, who just passed away. Johnny, I took him with me, and he got the drumsticks from The Who. I gave him the drumsticks. I don't think we took our family too many concerts. I can't remember taking them at all, because once you're doing your job, you can't be worried about what your wife or your daughter or your son or your friends are doing. You have to go where the action is, and that's the hard part.
You have to focus 100% on what you're doing.
Yeah, you're zeroed in. You focus through. You look through the right eye, and you focus through the right eye, and you look through the left eye, and then what you do is you trigger. It's all just one movement. It's continual. So, I mean, it's fast and furious. And plus you're lugging sometimes 35, 40 pounds of camera gear on your shoulder. But the biggest thing is, I used to walk into these places without credentials. Today I work for the Plain Dealer as a freelancer. I carry more bells and whistles, identification on who I have. Back then, I just went in, and I looked like I owned the place, and they let me through. I wore a suit and a tie, and I went through it. But
well, it's a different era, George.
Yeah, it is. But the funny part is, it was a great era. It was the era of puberty in rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best way I can describe it.
No, it's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Sonny and Cher. That's probably one of the best shots I shot of Sonny and Cher. She was only like 14 years old.
Really? Yeah, all right.
Yeah, and then you got Pete Townsend doing his windmill. Otis Redding, like I said before, he performed on December 10th, 1967.
And he died
right
after
he decided they went over to Leo's Casino, right. And they performed there. And they decided to catch a plane Monday morning. They hit a snowstorm, and they crashed in Michigan, and they were all killed, except for one of the Barclays. Only one survived. He didn't go because he was sick.
Wow.
But, every one of these stories, Dave Clark is
the
dead.
drummer, yeah.
Yeah, he's dead. The Temptations,
David Ruffin.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got the Beach Boys. Beach Boys were, they were out of sight. These guys were nuts. Totally nuts. They, as you see them, they were. The picture I got is one where...
Mike Love.
Yeah, Mike Love, thank you. I see these things so many times, I remember them so many times, you forget their names. He's holding his nose, telling his partner that he stinks. You know,
It looks like Al Jardine.
it is Al. And you go on. Let's go to the Who for a second, because that's a story all by itself.
Now, the Who came over here basically in the second wave of the British invasion.
Right.
And they used to be called the High Numbers. They had a small following, but it grew fast.
Well, he opened up for
Herman's Hermits, right?
Thank you. You know, after a period of time when you do this thing 100,000 times and you repeat the same things, you start to forget.
Yeah.
But you have to understand, there was a dividing wall between music hall and public hall, and they were playing music hall. And what had happened was, all of a sudden, we were waiting to the end because we were going to do an interview with them after the show was over with. So I was on the stage left, and all of a sudden, the drummer let off these pyrotechnics, and this huge cloud of smoke went up in the air. And I said, oh, that's the end of the show. So I ran all the way over to the other side. I get over to the other side, and all of a sudden they said, well, he's going to throw his guitar in the air. Now, where I was standing, I couldn't shoot the picture because there was drapes. So I had to run all the way back to the other side.
Boy.
And I shot the picture. So I'm sitting there huffing, puffing, waiting for a doctor to check my heart. Then all of a sudden, he says, oh, he's throwing his drumsticks into the audience. Ran all the way back. So I got a picture of that.
Yeah, it's in the book here.
Yeah, and then finally got over to the other side, and they said, oh, this is a conclusion. He's going to throw his drums in the audience. Now, at this point, I'm so ticked off. I didn't give a damn what happened. I just ran over there, picked up my camera, and I went click, and the drums were in perfect alignment, and it says, The Who.
Wow.
On the drum skin.
Keith Moon was crazy.
They were all crazy.
What were they like to talk to? I mean, just like you and I are speaking.
I had no problems. I guess I'm not an introvert. I guess I'm an introvert to a certain point. I get along with everybody. The only group that I did not get along with was Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger was... he had a bad session when they came to Cleveland, and they only had 3,000 people attend. But they were called the Bad Boys of Rock and Roll. And so we had an interview with me and Joe Mayer from WHK Radio, and they never gave us the interview. So we just wrote them off our Christmas list. So that was it. But you see, when I was shooting, they would give you 3 songs. 3 songs, and you're out.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to, let's see, that was the concert over at the stadium, Daryl. The
World Tours of Rock, 1975. Rolling
Right.
Stones.
Oh, yeah.
So now you got to understand, there's an 18-foot stage, there's an 18-foot no man's zone, there's a fence, and the bodyguards that were there, these guys are all either football players or boxers that got their bell rung. I was on top of this guy's shoulders, this huge man, and there was a fence, and I'm getting grabbed, and my camera gear is starting to, can I say ass? Okay, I can't say ass.
No, you're fine, George.
Delete that word. Rectum it broke him.
Or posterior, that's fine.
Yeah. But anyhow, so we got a picture of 80,000 people in one shot.
That's amazing.
And, I mean, it was just amazing. But the thing was that with Jagger, he pranced around like a chicken in heat. And when he moved back 5 feet, you didn't see the top of his head.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know how he is.
Yeah.
He's here, there, he's everywhere.
Right.
And so finally, at the very end of the song, and don't ask me what song he was playing, because when you're doing this job, you're not listening to music. Mm-hmm. If you offered me $1 million and said, tell me what songs the Beatles played or Neil Diamond played,
well,
I couldn't tell you.
You're watching what they're doing.
I'm concentrating on my job. My job was to photograph and preserve that picture for history. And he bent over, and that's the shot in the upper left-hand corner. And it's probably one of the best shots of the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger. But James Brown, I went backstage with James Brown, and I watched James with that cantor, and he walked by all these silk suits, and he dragged his hand, walked down the aisle on one side, came down the aisle on the other side. Beneath his suits were his shoes lined up perfectly.
So he can, yeah.
pick out the shoot.
Whatever costume he needed to wear.
Right. What he felt. Then came around. So I came up to him and I said, James, I said, my name is George Shuba. I'm going to be your photographer. And I said, I'm going to be roaming around. I'll be wearing a pink carnation. And he's walking. He stops and he turns around. He said, what's wrong with you? And I said, what do you mean, what's wrong with me? He said, you're the only white dude in the whole place. He said, I can find you. He said, but I like you. And that was my way of making a fool of me, but doing a little bit of introduction so that we became on a level par.
Yeah.
And I use psychology, and I use that continually. Aretha Franklin, I'm backstage with Aretha Franklin. Same concert. This was the arena. And when I went to Aretha, I said, Aretha, I said, can I get you a cup of coffee? And she said, I should get you a cup of coffee. And I said, why? You're the star. I'm just the photographer. She chastised me. She said, if it wasn't for people like you putting our pictures in a paper and making us famous, we wouldn't be famous. Maybe not the exact words, but the connotation.
Yeah, the
is
paraphrasing, yeah.
It's perfect. So I have the highest respect for Aretha. You know, I mean, I love her music. You know, when I watch the Blues Brothers and I see that one song and
she's doing Think, yeah.
I just remember being with her and everything else. But she was down to earth. Most of them were down to earth. I would say 99% of them. A lot of them were coming off of different. They would do a concert at night, and then of course they'd come back and we'd do the upbeat show, which we started out at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we had to finish by 4 because we went on the air at 5. And it was a trial and a tribulation. Half of these guys were so stoned, we just set them against the psych area, and we panned right by them. And
what day did you record that show?
Which one was that?
The upbeat show.
It was on a Saturday, every Saturday, for about 7 years. It's in the beginning of the book. You'll read it.
I think it went off the air in 1971.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm lousy at dates, and that's why I bring Daryl around every so often. Put me back in check, and normally I'm 90% wrong.
We're talking to George Shuba, world-famous photographer here on the Ray Carr Show. George, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back here on WCSB Cleveland. We're back live with George Shuba.
They destroyed. Oh, God, you couldn't believe on how they destroyed the rooms. You know, especially the Who. The Who.
They didn't care.
No. They smashed guitars. Daryl was telling me, I don't know a Stradivarius from a Stravinsky, and I don't even.
Or a Stratocaster.
Yeah, or him too.
He has a picture of Pete Townsend throwing up Rickenbacker.
Oh my!
At 12 feet above his head, and he snapped it. It never made it because I seen the negative where it's all over the floor. It was never developed.
That's a beautiful guitar.
Yeah, it's a Rickenbacker. Yes.
Wow.
In fact, this was so funny because, like I said, I worked for the Plain Dealer. I went over to this black guy's house and I asked him, and this guy's got dementia, and I said, what does your husband like to do? And so she said, well, he played guitar, and I showed the picture to Daryl, and I thought Daryl was going to, go crazy because, he saves guitars, and,
right.
he's into guitars. We're going to the guitar show in Columbus in June. There's going to be 4,000 guitars there. And I mean, it's at the El Sarad Grotto Mosque. And I mean to tell you, I've never seen so many people interested in rock and roll. And this is one of the functions and reason why I do what I'm doing. I've been on D. Williams, I think it's D. Williams, on PBS.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is about the 8th time I think I was on a couple of weeks ago where she put my story. This is when I had cancer. And but she loved this story so much, and I'm going to get back out there again. I'm going to start promoting and start hitting the radio stations and the television stations. We got something that's big that's coming up, and when it comes up, Ray, I will give you the first chance.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you.
Yeah, this is going to be big. This is going to be really big.
I am honored, George.
And I'm not bullshitting you on this thing. I'm telling you, it's going to be big. But the biggest thing is that we want to preserve this stuff, and it's going to be hard. My first album cover was the OJs.
Wow.
Remember, I was the only white guy doing all black groups.
University Hospital stairwell. Where
Oh,
it was
really?
shot. Yeah.
Did
right?
you think of it that way when you were doing that? Did you think, when you were doing the OJs, James Brown, did you think that, I'm the only white guy doing this, or is it a job and you're just doing it and it just kind of like dawned on you?
I was doing it for the shekels.
Okay. But over time, though, then you realize, God, I don't see anybody else,
Well, I started a trend because the way it proceeds, I'm the grandfather of rock and roll photography. Jane Scott coined me that way. Then came, not Anastasia, but came Jan McCoska, who followed me up, and then came Anastasia. And so we're the big three, if you want to call it the big three. But where my stuff excels, they're doing stuff that it's with motor drive. I was doing it with 2 1/4 film, one shot at a time, picking the shot, picking the time, waiting for that precise moment and going click, a millisecond. The difference between a professional and an amateur is a millisecond, and that is pretty fast.
Yeah.
You got to have coordination like you couldn't believe. I have no artistic training whatsoever. My artistic training in the Air Force was to shoot pictures of jet planes that crashed and pilots that crashed and doing other things. But I got my formal training through the Air Force. So,
But it has to be an instinct. You have to know, like you have to, something
I
inside
feel
you
it.
has to say,
I
you
feel
got to
it.
feel it.
yeah, I feel it through my fingers.
Okay. Well,
And that's the key to it.
as time went on, though, in the late 60s, you were able to hook up with Jimi Hendrix. That must have been incredible to watch that kind of a
He
show.
was just another person.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to sound like something big or anything else like that, but, Daryl, he sort of puts me on a level a little above the average person. And I said, no, I'm not, I don't want that. I just want to be George Shuba. I just want to be one of the guys, I mean, it's nice to talk about this stuff. It's nice to be on the radio. But the thing is, it's history. When you preserve history, that to me is an accomplishment. That's my PhD in music. I'm preserving the music of our time. My time was the 60s and the 70s and into a little bit into the 80s. But after that, becoming a cop and seeing the stuff, I still have with the Belkin brothers, or I had, to go to any show that I want, and I could do anything I wanted. They gave me free rein, carte blanche, and that was nice. I mean, and we're still, when I see them, they're still great people. So
They were the first to have a concert club, right?
Oh yeah, they were the first one to bring in some of the top names. But there were a lot of ones. The OJs was the first album cover, like we said. We shot this at University Hospital, and but the one I look down at, I see John Denver with the Chad Mitchell Trio. I mean, how far you go back, and then you see Mitch Ryder, and there's the police, trying to move the people away. The Fifth Dimension were just phenomenal. I mean, we talked, and the funny part about it is when you're there, everybody says, "What do you talk about?" Well, someone brings up a subject, and then you just jump on it. And we talked about everything from sports to insects. I mean,
They're people.
that's it. That's it. That's the whole thing. They're not gods. They're people. But they're talented people. People that have an ability. I have the highest regard for people. I don't care if you're a DJ or you're a program director or whatever the case is. If you know how to interpret that music and you can put it on the air so you can make it a hit, not like the old payola days, but that's really important. You need those people, and they're very far and few and in between.
Well, I would agree with you. I think there's certain people in the business that really know what they're doing, that have a sense of what they're doing. And you have to have that sixth sense within you to be able to do it right. And I've been doing stuff like that for years. But, for what you do, though, you're preserving history and rock and roll to audiences that have never seen these people.
Yeah.
They've only read about them. Oh, Neil Diamond. Well, everybody knows about Sweet Caroline, and they see him today, but they're looking at Neil Diamond in this picture that I'm looking at right now going, God, look how young he was. That's a beautiful picture.
But you ought to see the picture we got with him with a full beard, which you will never see.
Wow.
See, that's the thing. Jimmy Morrison, I mean, now you can tell he's stoned out of his tree right there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about that. But I mean, he was the type. I had a big argument with Ray Manzarek, and one of the pictures in his act. Well, first of all, he jumps in to the audience. I think he was the first one, and I'm only assuming this. I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong, to start the mosh pit. So he jumped into the audience, and here's this girl grabbing his backside. Now, was she lifting his wallet, or was she getting a cheap feel? I don't know what she was doing, but whatever the case may be, I captured that on film. I got another shot of him doing something with what Michael Jackson used to do.
Oh.
Grab his
Yeah.
lower parts, his extremities. But, you see, the thing is, I never try to belittle a client. These are my clients, and I wanted to make them look good. And that was the key issue to it. There's not a shot on this board that we have here, and this is only a small sample of what we got. And it's just unbelievable of the stuff that we got stuff right now that we've never even printed in 40 and 50 years.
Do you plan on doing that?
Well, the only problem is Kodak went into Chapter 11, and because I'm a newspaper photographer, I can't get the chemistry in the paper anymore. So I have to revert to a different way of making prints, more costly. But the biggest thing is these are collectibles. These are stuff that you will not find in your average art gallery. These are specialty prints, and they're going to be online. We do have it on our line right now.
What is the website?
The website is what is my website? Oh, it's georgeshuba.com.
That's
GeorgeShubaPhotography.com.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't call myself too often, so.
Well, George, it's on my website too, so
Yeah.
People see your
Well, I have
picture.
to normally put a card in front of me, But
Well, how many people how many different acts do you think you photographed in the last 40 years?
God, that's a good question. What would you say, Daryl? Give me a guesstimate. We go to the shows. We have 4 baskets, milk baskets of prints. Sometimes we carry 1,000 to 2,000 prints, and these are all hand printed. See, I believe in the old method, Kodak hand printing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't lift them anymore because I had cancer, and Daryl does the grunt work. Not that's.
But Daryl enjoys that, right?
Oh, I love it.
I couldn't have picked a better person to meet. I mean, we pal together.
That's good.
And we do things together, and But the biggest thing is that we have the same likes and dislikes, and we argue about which is a better group. And we'll be driving to Columbus, and all of a sudden he'll say, "Okay, who played that song?" I don't really give a damn, Daryl. Well, why do you listen to it? I like the music, Daryl. Well, do you listen to the words? No, Daryl, I could care less. Do you know that there are 14 deer that were killed on this road? Because this is the 51 that we just passed. And that's what we do. And
Felix and Oscar.
Yeah, and he gets so PO'd at me. Sometimes I wonder if we make it down to Columbus.
That's funny, George.
But we have fun with it.
Right.
See, I mean, we don't make it a job. Unless
really, that's what it is. It's entertainment.
It is, and it's hard to explain to a person who doesn't understand what we're doing, because anybody can come out. Today's day and age with the new digital outlet, you can get a chimpanzee and give him a camera, and he can come up with a shot, and no reflection against the chimpanzees. But it's so simple. This was art. One shot at a time, 1 millisecond at a time. That's the difference. Where did this come from? I don't know. But the biggest thing is, God gave me a gift, and I'm just thankful that he gave it to me instead of Daryl.
Well, Daryl's got other gifts, I'm sure.
Oh, he does.
But George, there's some one-hit wonders here. I mean, acts that really kind of fell through the cracks. The Shangri-Las, they were big in 1964 and 65, but they kind of fell off the face of the earth.
But they're making a resurgence.
Yeah.
But you see, on the Shangri-Las, we're looking at the Shangri-Las pictures. There's two sets of twins. They're both dead. And then there's the two sisters.
Okay.
It's Mary Wells, and she's in the center. Mary's got her own group, and she's got a backup band that's from Cleveland. But her sister's got breast cancer. And so, a lot of people, rock and roll is a hard life.
Sure is.
Just look at, the Stones. I'm sure the Stones are dead. Their body just never caught up to them yet. Because,
how does Keith Richards still do what he does?
Who knows?
Look at him. He looks like he's been dead for 2 years.
He's climbing up trees and falling out of coconut trees. What can I tell you? And you look, I met him at the grand opening of the induction ceremonies. And, we came over, we introduced ourselves and everything else like that. And
did
he's a
he
nice
remember
guy.
you?
I doubt it.
Okay.
I doubt it. He meets so many people.
Right.
But the biggest thing is, the ones that you want to leave the mark impression on, you've left a mark impression on. I would rather work with the smaller people, because small people become big people. That's my philosophy. You're working for a college radio station. Someday someone's going to discover you, and you're going to go on to a bigger and better thing, I hope, if that's what your profession is. And if I'm instrumental in helping just this little bit to push you forward, then I've accomplished my mission.
George, just having you on the show here is an honor.
I feel honored to be here, and
thank you.
And this is the first time that I've taken Daryl and my wife and my daughter.
Glad to have everyone here. This is
and
this
of
is
course
fantastic.
your program director there. Is that your title?
Cindy is she's the public relations director.
Okay. Yeah. But
George, if I may, I'd like to just speak briefly about Upbeat and its impact on Cleveland, and your opinion of the importance of Upbeat.
Okay. To answer your question on that, Cleveland is a trial and error city. Okay? And the way it used to be is, if you could break a record in Cleveland, that's why Upbeat was there. They brought unknowns, like, say, for instance, Neil Diamond, Sly and the Family Stone, at that time even the Temptations, Crosby, Stills and Nash, the OJs, Paul Revere and the Raiders. They broke their songs on the Upbeat. We were into 110 markets. Sometimes it was Poughkeepsie, New York at 4 o'clock in the morning. But if you could break a record in Cleveland, you could break it anywhere in the world. And that's why we were called a trial and error city. Now, the big names came out. At one point, when I first started, I was working for 3 radio stations, which was Wixie Radio, WKYC Radio, WHK Radio, the Cleveland Press, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and 26 record companies.
Wow.
Not at the same time. I pitted one against the other. And that's the way I earned my income. I would call Wixie up and say, hey, you got a photographer for this concert? No. If I can guarantee you a space in a Plain Dealer, will you hire me? And that's what I would do. I was a Sergeant Bilko, if you ever watched the program.
Phil Silvers,
Phil, yeah. He was the biggest con artist in the world.
But you got the job done.
And I was the biggest con artist in the world.
Hey, by any means necessary.
And, yeah, whatever strokes your bubble.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. But the biggest thing is that I met a lot of nice people. My claim to fame right now is 1,200,000 people that I've photographed. And this is factual.
That's unbelievable. I mean, to say the least.
I have a little thing when I was making test prints. I would take a test print, and I would keep the test print and throw it into a box. And I have a couple boxes where I wanted to do this collage of the people I photographed. In fact, just a couple months ago, I was going through some of my old prints. I probably could cover this room with prints, probably 3 foot tall. I mean, that's how many prints are black and white. But it's a lost art, and that's the biggest thing. And we go in a circle in photography. It's not the camera. It's the person behind the camera. It's when you see it, you can't hesitate. You've got to go click. The millisecond. Remember, between an amateur and a professional. I can take a box camera and I can come up with a picture. That's the first cameras that came out. First camera I made was a cigar box with a hole in the center, put some film behind it, and had some tinfoil as a lens. And that was my camera. So, I mean, but things have changed. And you take the digital cameras today and you get ingenious with them.
Are they as good?
Durability-wise, they suck. I mean, they're made of titanium. You bounce them off the ground once, boom, and you got 1,000 little parts. I went into my camera repair guy because this lady sat on my camera, and I handed him this pile of material, and I said, "Can you fix this?" And he died laughing. So the funeral's tomorrow morning. Yeah.
George, what type of camera did you use when you photographed, in the golden era here?
Well, I started out with a 4x5 press camera, and I found out that was stupid because I didn't have the flexibility, and you had to do too much putting flash bulbs in and everything else. Then I went to a 2 1/4 camera, 2 1/4 Mamiya C3 and a C33.
Do you still have that camera?
I got some of my first cameras, yeah.
Good.
I got some of them. Then I went into going back to the Nikons, and then I went to I'll get technical, the 2 FSAs and the F3s and the F4s. And now I'm with digital, and I'm using a Canon D20 and a D40. And but it's not the camera sometimes; it's the person behind the camera.
Right.
The person behind the camera can either make or break you. You always can tell whether it's a Republican paper or a Democratic paper. If you got George Bush picking his nose, that's a Democratic paper.
Sure.
If you got George Bush smiling, that's a Republican paper.
Oh, true.
See the power of the press?
Yeah. Influence.
And don't tell me it doesn't exist, because look at your paper. Look at your paper today. But the thing that I don't like is I don't want to belittle someone just to get a picture. My wife tells me, go shoot Paul McCartney when he comes in town. And I said, why do I want to shoot Paul McCartney? I'm looking at an old man. I can look in the mirror. I can see me. I want to see him as I see him, in the stuff that I do up in the top up left-hand corner. That's the one I was talking about. That's what I want to see. There's another shot there if we still got time.
Sure.
That's a press conference.
The WHK press conference. Yeah.
Okay, a photographer was on the right-hand side. I was on the left-hand side. George Harrison, who was baptized a Catholic, was on the left-hand side. 2 photographers shot at the same time. The chance of that happening are about 1 in a million, my figures. Same shutter speed, same film, same f-stop, everything. In front of George Harrison was a microphone stand. And when the flashes went off simultaneously and we had no way of connecting with each other, it formed a cross in front of him.
Oh, my God.
We call this an anomaly. Now I'm looking at my negatives very carefully. The Beatles, Ringo in the back seat. We found some other ones. And as we look at stuff, we're seeing stuff that is super implanted. And what do you want to call that? What's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it right off time. It's subliminal. It's a subliminal suggestion, And I've done plenty of ads when I worked in advertising where you take something and you write something on a sock, and you don't write something on a sock, and you sell more socks. So, I mean, there's all kinds of tricks to this business.
But see, that you could not have controlled. That was just one of those...
no, it's a happening.
Yeah. It's not even a coincidence. It probably was meant to happen.
Well, it's... and the funny part is you get all psyched up about it, and I still get psyched about going on a job. When I go on these jobs today, it's really, even if I'm shooting for the plane dealer or something like that, there's times that I get so nervous, and everybody says, what are you afraid of? You've done this thing. This should be old hat. No, it's never old hat. It's like the first picture you take. Every time it's a new job, it's your first job.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain to someone who doesn't go click with a camera. That's the same thing.
Because you know why, George? You care.
Well, I put a lot into it.
And you care so much that you want it to be perfect. And if you didn't care, you probably wouldn't feel that way.
I am a perfectionist.
So
yeah,
that's
in photography.
This is why. I mean, people that don't care don't produce what you produced.
Is she smiling in the back behind me?
I believe she is.
Or is there a knife coming through? But that's the difference. You just got to wait for that moment. You almost have to anticipate doing something before they do it. Mm-hmm. So you're actually outthinking them. The shots that Janie Hendricks, when I sent her the proof sheets of Jimi Hendrix for the Jimi Hendrix Experience Museum, wrote me a letter back and said these are the best pictures she saw that was shot in one venue. Now I'm trying to sell her my stuff so that she can have those. Mm-hmm. But I tell people, go to our website, take a look, and you judge it, And it's real simple. Again, you've got the website down, GeorgeShubaPhotography.com, and you'll see some pictures that you've never seen before. And newer things are going to be coming out. There's going to be a whole new array of stuff that we haven't even produced. I don't think it's ever been produced or published in any magazines. I'm in Feast of Friends. I'm in Morrison's books. I'm in Jimi Hendrix's books. We're in different books all over the world. And, of course, a lot of people are bogarting my stuff.
Well, people want to imitate the greats.
Well,
but it's not fair, though.
Yeah, but this is it's been a labor of love. But you know what? I always wanted to be certain things in my life. My best friend who passed away, his brother was a Life magazine photographer. That's where I got my first start in a coal bin processing film. And we did our pictures, and he moved on to be a very successful individual. I stayed with the Air Force and went through my schooling and came out, stayed in photography, and went through all my, hardships. But the biggest thing was that, you learned your trade, and you made mistakes, and made a lot of mistakes. I worked with an Air Force general one day, and after getting my one stripe in the Air Force, and I was so proud of it, and the old 4x5 cameras, they had a thing called a dark slide, and if you didn't take out the dark slide, you shot blank film. I spent a whole day shooting blank film. I also lost my one stripe. It used to be on Velcro. So
well, that's a learning process.
Yeah, it is, but it's fun, and you got to meet a lot of great people, and we're still friends. The guy named Harvey Holliker is one of my. He's the makeup artist for the Upbeat show. We want to do something together where because he's got stories to tell about these guys that came in.
Oh, I'd like to hear those.
Oh, I'd be honored if we could bring them down one of these days. And,
sure.
Because I'll tell you, there are stories that you just won't believe.
Can you give us an inside story of something that nobody's ever heard on the radio before? I know you got a lot of them, but maybe just share one of them with us.
Well, let's see. I have to see which one I can clean up. That would be pretty tough to do right offhand, but let me put that in the back of my memory bank.
Okay.
Because there were a lot of things that happened. I mean, Sonny and Cher, an example. I mean, I was scared to death of those two. When I shot that picture, I think my camera was probably shaking more than the leaves on a tree that had a 90-mile-an-hour wind outside. I was scared. It's
why?
I'm just a little Polish boy from the west side of Cleveland, and to meet some of the greats. Now, after that happened, that's when all my fears went out. When I became a cop, I became Nixon's bodyguard for one day. That's how far I went. I went from one angle to another angle. I sort of hopscotched. But I actually spent the whole day with Richard Nixon and got served tea by Mrs. Nixon in Macedonia.
Wow. Pat Nixon.
Yeah.
That must have been something.
And one of the best shots that I got is a picture of Ron Reagan with Nancy. That was one of the best shots that I ever shot.
Good old Dutch.
That was in Stofers.
Yeah, Stofers. So there have been a lot of great people, Captain Penny and Miss Barbara and Mr. Jingling, and Gallardi.
Ernie Anderson, yeah, sure.
Ernie,
Tim Conway?
I got a picture of Tim Conway with Joe Flynn off of their show, and you get to meet a lot of the stars. But the funniest thing is, they're all human, just like you and I.
Sure.
Like, we had an instant bonding today when we first met.
Yeah.
I sensed it right off the top. I mean, I'm not going to marry you, okay? So I know
doggone.
you're disappointed, but you'll just have to bear through it. But you sense it, and that was the same thing with Daryl and I when we first met. There was a way of bonding,
chemistry.
It just gelled, and I couldn't ask for a better person to be a friend of mine, and
that's what you need.
Yeah,
it's all about people you can trust.
It's camaraderie.
Yeah, if you don't have that, you really don't have anything.
No, you don't.
And there's so few people in this world that actually happens.
And it's hard, and it's hard to explain to people what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it. You gave me a cheat list when we first started out, and said this is the things that we wanted to talk about. But I wanted you to see the people that we shot, because to me, that's what we're trying to promote. They used my pictures for the first 10 years of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I sat on 2 boards of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Norman Knight and everybody else. But the biggest thing is that I get the biggest sensation is when I see my picture in the paper, even though it's only one picture that's on the Plain Dealer, Section C. It's called Top Jobs. A little plug for the Plain Dealer, so I can keep my job. Anyhow. But it makes me feel happy. And when I get the compliments back from the individuals, but I will not let a bad picture go out. That's one of my prerequisites. I just can't do that.
What do you consider a bad picture? I know it sounds like an easy question to answer, but you may look at a picture and say it's bad. I may look at a picture and say, well, that's not too bad. It's all right.
Well, everybody has their own opinion of what a picture is.
But being a professional, though.
It's hard to explain. I mean, I have many arguments with a certain person in my family that who will go nameless, Carol. She'll look at it and she sees it in a different light, and I see it in a total different light. It's a matter of interpretation.
All right.
And that's the same thing that Daryl and I do. We go back and forth, and we talk about different things and how we're going to do it and how we're going to shoot it. The new things that are coming out that we're going to be putting together is I want to do a Salvatore Dali type of print.
Surrealism.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love Dali.
Yeah, it's
The melting clocks. Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, you can.
Campbell's soup cans.
Yeah, Andy Warhol. Yeah.
Yeah, Andy Warhol. Yeah, and that stuff it's avant-garde. It's the in thing to do today. It's hard to transition from being traditional to advanced, and that's the hardest part for a photographer. That's like taking an old camera and you stay with that old camera until it dies, and now to go to the new stuff. The new stuff is great as long as you can go with it. I am not computer savvy. I make no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm computer illiterate.
I've had to get that way to do what I do, but it takes time because I didn't grow up in the computer era.
No. I look at this board in front of me and, I think, wow, this would be fun to play with. Yeah.
Well, actually, we're not even using this one, so
okay,
this is actually for a band. Sure, go right ahead, George.
But everyone, like I said, I was just privileged that I could meet all these people, and I had a great time with it, and I met a lot of disc jockeys. There's not a city that I couldn't go to that I can't find somebody that I know. There was a guy, my son called me up a couple days ago, and he said he was in a bar in Florida. He saw little John Rinaldi.
Oh, he was on the show too, yeah.
So John, he walked up to John and he says, little John, he says, we got a mutual friend. We're from Cleveland. He says, oh, really? And he says, yeah, George Shuba. And he says, you know George? This is John talking. He says, yeah, let me buy you a drink. No, let me buy you 2 drinks. So,
that's
but,
great.
you set up that. And, it's hard. I mean, I worked in an age where people were people, and we do things by a handshake, not a contractual agreement that's 14 pages long and everything else like
right.
that. But now, today's day and age, you've got to do it to protect yourself.
Well, there's a lot of people that are very duplicitous out there that'll take you for everything you got.
I just found one of my pictures that was on a T-shirt, and
Spencer's.
yeah,
Pirated.
The Doors, it's not on here.
no,
Well, that's a copyright infringement.
yeah, and all my photos are copyrighted with the copyright
So
office.
somebody stole that, and that's a breach.
We do make mistakes.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying that I haven't made a mistake in my life and haven't done it, taken somebody else's photograph thinking that I shot it. It's happened. But when you start shooting that many pictures, you try to minimize that. You know, I've got an eraser on my pencil, and I try to like I said. But we did contact the person, and it was the Morrison Group, and they were very receptive, and we got our check, and now I've developed a new account. But it's a matter of attitude.
Yeah.
You got to use psychology on it, and it's
Psychology.
important. It's how you present yourself, and if you go in there demanding a lot of stuff, you're not going to get anywhere.
No.
You know, but yeah, the music field has changed. You know, and that's the hard part.
I play mostly oldies on my show, 50s and 60s, rare novelty stuff. And I do parties, I have to play newer stuff. I don't enjoy that at all. I don't relate to the newer audiences. I have to try to somehow do that, but I don't do it well. I just don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I just don't understand what they're trying to say.
Now, is this your full-time job?
No, I also do mobile DJ work.
Okay.
And that's what that's what's really given me the money to, live. But I do, this is what I want to do.
Well, this is fun stuff.
Yeah.
You know, because I wish I could say more about what we're doing, but when we're ready, like I said, Ray, I'll give you a first break on this.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because, and you'll have an exclusive.
Oh, I would
I
love
guarantee you'll have an exclusive.
I would love that.
You know, because I know what's happening. Daryl knows what's happening. Two people behind me knows what's happening. And now it's just a matter of everything falling in place, and it's starting to fall in place.
Good.
And it's going to be something that's going to be totally what this city, the state needs. But the most important thing, it's the preservation of rock and roll. It's an entirety. You know, rock and roll has changed so many different directions, and now we got to get back to the basics.
Yeah.
Everything has a circle.
Yeah.
It starts at the beginning and it has to come back. Photography's one way. Rock and roll has the same thing. So my investment is going to be in polkas. Hello?
Polkas.
Yeah. Did you see the look on his face? Did you see the look on everybody's face?
Well,
I'm Polish.
Yeah, I do enjoy polkas. I actually, I really do. Who Stole the Kishka? I mean, that's one of my favorites.
He has all kinds from the polka varieties.
Yeah.
Now, see, Paul Wilcox. There's a guy. Paul Wilcox was great.
He has all the local personalities, not just rock and roll. He has every Cleveland local
See,
personality.
Mike
there is.
Douglas was another one of my favorites. I love Mike Douglas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have a bunch of his records, all the men in my little girl's life. He had that one hit song back in 1966 or something. And I mean, I remember a lot. Even though I was only born in '63, I remember this stuff.
This really hurts, that. It's like,
George, I did a lot of history. I worked really hard on trying to know, people in Cleveland and who came before and all that stuff. And I love it. My mind's always been there in this era. It's the best. It really is.
Well, there's a little story with Paul Wilcox. He was captured by the North Koreans, and he was tortured. They dripped water on his face, held his eyes open until he broke.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that's you wanted a first, you got it just now.
How did he looked so, I mean, how did he adapt once he got back? That
It was a psychological trick. I mean, that's one of the things that they used. The ploys they used in North Vietnam, they used that in North Korea. But imagine 24, 46 hours. It's like waterboarding, except one drop at a time. And you're watching that one drop waiting to come down, and your eyes are taped open, and you don't fall asleep. And it hits your nose. And where does the water go?
that's horrible.
I mean, if you don't crack under that, But there's been a lot of things like that. That's why I like this situation we got here with these young girls. I think you're going to see a lot of stories that are going to come out of this. And it's only the beginning.
A lot of ugly ones.
And it's only the tip. But see, the problem that we have in life today is nobody cares about anybody.
It's a narcissistic society. It's
Absolutely.
all about me. I don't care if I have to hurt you to get what I want. It doesn't matter.
See, Daryl, I told you that.
No, George, you're right. I see it every day, and it's terrible. I don't know how else I could put that. It's just you try to hold the door open for somebody, a common courtesy. You're nice to people. I don't see that down here.
You want to have fun with something? Walk down the street and smile and say good morning to somebody. They will walk right around you.
They'll look at you like you're out of your mind.
Yeah, they think you're nuts.
What's he smoking?
Yeah.
Why is he smiling at me?
Yeah, why is he smiling? The world's in turmoil, and he's smiling.
Right. Maybe he's retarded.
You can't use that word.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Maybe he's challenged.
That's it. Okay. I work for the Mental Retardation
Sorry.
Board, so I know. But yeah, there were a lot of things that happened. And you know, funny part is, as we go through our negatives, and that's why I use this thing as a storyboard, these things trigger something on all this stuff. Everything that happens for a reason. And someday, what I would like to do, very shortly, is tape my memoirs of all the stuff that I've got down and put that down, and because I think that's for posterity. Because it is Cleveland's history. You know, I am Cleveland's history. I am Cleveland's first rock photographer, and no one can take that away from me.
No, you...
I've earned a privilege and a pleasure. But the thing is it going to change me? No. I'm going to still be the same George Shuba. I'll still get in arguments with Daryl and everybody behind me. And
well, you're a beloved individual.
Well, in certain certain places. Is there any knives coming from the back end of the audience? You know,
George,
I make mistakes.
Well, we all do, but
I wanted to bring up something, and I just lost my train of thought for a second here. When you were mentioning about Cleveland bands, when Dave C. and the Sharptones died, I got a call from his relatives, and they said Dave C. had died, and we know you did his small, whatchamacallit, CD, and could you donate some money to his funeral? And I said, well, I didn't know who this was, so I wasn't going to take no chance. I said, well, what else do you need? She said, I need a picture of Dave C. So she gave me an address of something on Broadway. And I went down to Broadway to, pay my respects. And the only place I could find was a used car lot. And I never did find Dave C. and the Sharptones.
Wow. So
that's sort of, because Dave used to play on the west side a lot on Brook Park.
Okay.
But there were a lot of different groups. We did Lude McDude. We did Fairweather.
Paul Fairweather.
Yeah, Paul Fairweather. We did
Baskerville Hounds.
Baskerville Hounds, Circus.
Stop, Wait, and Listen was one of my favorite songs growing up.
And that was the thing about those guys. I mean, they were up and coming, and we could do anything we wanted. Snake Rock was one. That was probably the, there was a heavy metal.
Yeah, I remember Snake Rock.
Because his dad was actually Snake Rock's father was named Cremona, and he was a prince, an actual prince in Italy. There's a place in Italy called Cremona, Italy, and he was one of my deputy sheriffs.
Huh. Wow.
So you see, in this business,
there's a lot of connections here.
Yeah, well, it's only if you deal into the people. People aren't going to tell you they're a prince or a princess or a con artist or whatever.
Right.
You sort of have to sort of get it out of them. But, I mean, this was something that he was very, very proud of. But I did look up his history in Cremona, Italy. And then, of course, we did, who else did we do, Daryl? There's so many groups that we did in the beginning.
How about Cyrus Erie?
I think we did Cyrus Erie. I think we did their promotion.
We did the choir.
Yeah, we did
the choir. Wally Bryson and company.
Yes.
Yeah, Dave Smalley.
Yeah, we did. I took Daryl down to Lock 3. And
tell him that story at the end.
We worked with Peter Noon. And this was the first time, and I said, Daryl, Here's your pass. And I said, now you can go anywhere you want. And Daryl would stand back over here behind the stage. And I said, Daryl, you can come forward. No, I can't. Daryl, you can come forward. We had liberty. See, people just don't realize that photographers, they're like spiders, water spiders. They're here, they're there, they're everywhere.
They have to be almost ubiquitous around the place.
Yes, that's the best way I could put it too, if I had to put it in any way. And that's what makes the difference, because you see something here, though you're shooting here in front of you, your eye is looking to the right and the left. Now, that's also my training with the Sheriff's Department, because you're always looking. I have peripheral vision. I can see both of these hands at the same time. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many degrees that would be, whether it's not 180 degrees, probably 156 or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's a long range. So you've got to be always looking to see what's happening, because there might be that one picture of that one girl or guy or whatever the case may be, and you never knew what a rock star was going to do.
Well, especially Jim Morrison.
Oh, Jim Morrison, gods, I'll tell you.
I don't even know how he lived as long as he did.
Well, you know, when he got on stage, the first thing he did, you know, they started playing and everything else, and they must have played about 4 minutes of the opening, and Jim just leaned over the microphone. And now the people are starting to get really antsy. And now, you know, they're starting to boo him and everything else, and he's telling them to go F off. You know, I mean, every fourth word was F.
And he got away with that.
Oh, yeah. And then there was supposed to be a staged riot, because that's when he came from Miami, and supposedly he exposed himself. Supposedly. And I explained to you what had happened.
Yes.
But we won't go into details on that. But the biggest thing is that they had a crew from ABC News that was there. And when Feliciano's Light My Fire came on, then that's when the staged riot was supposed to happen. And I knew about it, but I was trapped in between the staged riot and the police, and sometimes you get locked into a situation that you cannot get out of. And there have been many a times that I had to fight my way out. I got beat up at the Beatles concert. I got beat up at the Morrison concert.
And that was at Public Hall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Guy came up on stage and just took a wild punch and hit me. And I hit him back with my strobe.
He was drunk or just...
He was high.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I got this one little news clipping. It said they only had one small accident at the Morrison concert. Man had facial injuries. Well, he came up and he raised his head after punching me. I said, do it again. And I took my strobe and I used it as a golf club, and I just watched him go slither down. I mean, I'm not a violent person by nature, but if you punch me,
oh, sure,
you know, I'm about to get a little angry, you know, and, you know, I wasn't too happy about it, but, or nor am I proud of it, but the biggest thing is that things do happen. But today's day and age, on these rock programs that I see, you know, gods, I mean, I sit there in front of my TV set if I'm watching something, and I'll go mentally click, click, click. I'm shooting a picture.
Yeah, you're what? Yeah, okay.
You know, it's still, the finger is moving, click, click, click. Maybe not at a millisecond. Maybe it's a little longer.
Yeah. You're thinking, you're watching something at a different level than the rest of us.
And the angle, of course, you're looking through the lens of the TV cameras.
Right.
But all the groups that I ever worked with, I mean, we had a lot of fun. We just made it interesting. One of the greatest things that I ever did, we were down in front of the Cleveland Stadium with Art, not Art Tarsitano.
Art Lafredo.
Art Lafredo.
Oh, the Streak.
Well, he did all the shoots for him.
Yeah.
So he came in, and beneath us, we were on the second floor. The first floor was the welfare rights people. So Art came down, and we did a makeup, and we were going to go over to the stadium. So I says, come on, Art, let's go downstairs and see the ladies at welfare rights. So he goes down there with his cane. He goes, hi, I need some money so I can do different things. I don't have, you'll sit down, mister. And he says, I'm getting money from you, I'm getting food. He says, I'm so happy, I'm so happy. He jumps up in the air, clicks his heels, and walks out the door. And they just looked at him with their eyes. And
What just happened?
Yeah, and then we sat there, we laughed our tails off. Then we get in front of the Cleveland Stadium, and while we're shooting a picture there was a nude statue. It was a modernistic statue. And so we're taking a picture, and all of a sudden, a police car goes by. And Art gets up, and he takes his cane, and he starts chasing me. And what are you doing? And he's yelling, hey, he's trying to hurt me. He's trying to rob me. Now the cops back up.
Oh, no.
And now this is paparazzi, right?
Yeah.
You know, everybody says, oh, we want to be like you. We want to be a photographer. It's such a nice profession. Yeah. And so they back up. Okay, sir, up against the car. And I said, no, wait a minute. We're shooting a photo shoot. Oh, no. He tried to hurt me. I says, look, go in my back wallet. Let me pull out my badge. I'm a reserve deputy sheriff, a captain. I said, and he's putting me on, and I'm going to kill him after we get done talking to you. and then we finally settled out. But you have fun with your stuff.
Yeah.
Big Chuck, Little John, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are just down to earth. We go to the Gallardi show every year, and you know, if we don't see Dick Goddard and Dick doesn't come over and talk to us and you know and have fun with us, and I mean, but you see different people, and you see all kinds of people that want to imitate you.
Yeah.
I guess that's the best form of flattery is imitation.
But what's going to happen when, God forbid, all these people pass away? I mean, who's going to carry that torch?
That's going to be the hard part.
I mean,
you guys will have to do it.
We're going to have to make museums and have movies because there won't be anybody that can ever come close to, you know, Big Chuck, Little John, George Shuba, people like that.
The Three Stooges were way ahead of their time.
Yeah.
You know, what was that program? Carol, help me out. With Lisa.
PBS?
Green Acres.
Oh, my God, Green Acres. I loved it. Eddie Albert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my wife is Hungarian, and she makes the same pancakes.
Hotcakes.
Hotcakes, yeah. And we make tires out of it. B.F. Goodrich bought the patent rights for it.
Oh. I love that. That's a great show.
Hey, I'm on the air. I can do anything I want. I know I got to drive home with
the
me.
Hungarian pancakes.
Oh, yeah, Hungarian. Well, she's Hungarian. But those programs are so far ahead of their times.
They were.
You know, and that's the stuff that we're missing today. And you can't get that back on TV anymore.
No.
Nor are we going to get the Upbeat show. I understand. I don't know if I could go that far either yet. Well,
go ahead, George.
You might see something with the... No, I think I'm going to back off on this because I think Mike Oshevsky would get a little mad at me. You know Mike?
I know of him. I've never actually met him.
Oh, fantastic. He's a professor at Kent State University and Akron University, and he's in communications. He was a DJ.
Yeah, I remember him
well. He's one of my good friends, and we've done a lot of things together. He's put the history of rock and roll and radio on sort of, it's been preserved. But one of the things, there is a museum over in the old not the old arcade, but the Euclid Arcade. I think it's still there. It's a combination of the Cleveland Indians and also rock and roll, early rock and roll with radio. And they got some of the tubes, and they got some of the mics and some of the stuff. I donated a lot of pictures there.
You know what I'm looking for? To get the old radio jingles.
Well,
that's what I want.
I've got some people I can give that to you.
That's what I want.
Yeah, because I've got some of the Wixie albums I'd be more than happy to loan you or give it to you. Yeah. Because that's where everything was. See, we used to do things that nobody else did.
Innovators.
Yeah. I mean, we had this one particular thing where they had this real big bust of the girl, and she was on East 9th Street, and they had almost like a Playmates contest at East 9th and Euclid. You imagine trying to get East 9th and Euclid now to do something?
No.
You know? I mean, see, that was the stuff. Gary D.
Oh,
You know, I mean, these are the classics. You're just not going to have these people around.
Joe Finan,
Yeah, Joe was another one. You know,
Bill Randall.
you know. Hell, I had a guy that. Oh, geez, I'm trying to think of these names. You know, I got to start getting a master list down. But there were a lot of different things.
Let's George. Let's wind the interview up talking about Michael Stanley, because Michael Stanley may have been one of the biggest bands ever to come out of Cleveland.
Right.
Do we have any stories, any thoughts about Michael Stanley?
Well, Mike, I was very privileged. We put together a Beatle tribute September 14th and 15th. And on that particular CD, and I'll see if I can get you a copy of this.
That's DVD.
DVD, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. That's why I've got him here. Smart.
He's a good man.
But anyhow, Mike did the narration. Let's see, we had Bob Casarda, who used to work for Channel 8. He did the filming. We have Jane Scott in there, voice.
Lakewood High graduate.
Yeah. And we had Bruno Bornino. We had John Oworski, who actually met his wife at a Beatle concert, and they eventually got married, and they got all the paraphernalia.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
John is, I guess I can say this, John is very good friends with Paul McCartney. So you see, there's a big circle if you know where to go and where to look. But Michael did an excellent job on the DVD, CD?
DVD.
DVD, thank you. Getting those mixed up. It's past my bedtime, you know. It's old people got to go to bed at a certain time. But he could make it big anywhere except he couldn't make it big in Cleveland. I think most of it was his own promotions. You know, I like Mike Stanley because my neighbor across the street was his roadie. When John died, John Vorbel died, Michael played actually at the funeral. He played a solo, guitar solo, I think for about 20 minutes or 25 minutes. It was so packed that you couldn't even, this was in Little Italy, you couldn't even get in there. I couldn't see John for his last time. And but Mike has been, he's gone through a lot. You know, he went through the death of his wife and everything else like that, and I think that took a lot out of him. And Mike just hasn't found that certain, I think there's a certain song that he's looking for. I think he's waiting for that one little break. And
Well,
I hope he makes it. I really do.
you know, let's get the show on the road, and you know, he had.
That's a great song.
I mean, he can't love. You know, he can't love you, and
But it's called promotion.
yeah.
If you don't have the right people backing you,
I would rather have quality stuff and not make it than make it and end up having nothing. Like, it's not substantive. It's just garbage. You know, like, I don't want to bring up any artists, but you know, you got to have quality. Even though you may not be rich because of it, you have the intrinsic value of knowing you put out something very good.
Yeah.
It isn't always about the money you get from it.
but see, they just found a bunch of stuff on Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
And the stuff on Jimi Hendrix, I was really surprised. It doesn't sound like anything, but you know, by the time you
Good, George. Thank you.